G'day, Bomber fans. Yeah, here we go, I guess. This is a video that's you guys have been asking for a while. You've been wanting me to chuck on my Matt Rosa cap and try and see, I guess, what we can do to the list, how we can cut it to create list spots. This is going to be a big part of Essendon's off-season, as much as we're excited to bring in, the young talent from the draft and everything and get more youth into the club. Essendon are in a really tricky spot in that we have 47 players on our list and we need to cut a lot of them if we want to be active in the off-season. So there's going to be a lot of delisting, a lot of trading. Today, I'm going to go through the entire list, zone by zone. I'll be talking about not just the out-of-contract guys, but everybody, and I'll be seeing whether or not we should be keeping them or trying to move them on. I'm going to be keeping this pretty balanced and realistic. I feel like a common thing for us nuffies to do is to just call for a player to be traded when they're not playing well. I think there's a bit more to it than that, and I'll try and make sure I keep that going and keep it, positionally based and not just about the player themselves, but what they offer to the team and everything and what they offer going forward. There's going to be some frustrating calls and annoying choices that I make in this video because, I annoyed myself just in the notes what I'm going to do. So I don't feel good about any of the choices I'm about to make. I'll probably change my mind on some of these as the video goes along. I'm not sold on anything here, so keep that in mind. This is not set in stone, my opinion. I'm still thinking it through. But yeah, this is just, I think it's important to remind ourselves that we're in a rebuild. We're looking towards the future, prioritizing youth, but this isn't a quick fix. So we're not just going to get rid of all the players that we need to this year. There's going to be players that we don't need going forward on our list in 2026, and that is something that we have to keep in mind. All right. So can't cut this list too deep right now like North Melbourne did all those years ago. We need to keep it. We need to make some change, but, we need to keep it as strong as possible going into next year. So let's start with the Ruck. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through player zones rather than players one by one. I think it's easier that way to look at, you can always look at a player and say they're tradable, but you do have to think about what it means to the shape of the team when you do that. So that's why we're going to go through zone by zone. We're going to be splitting it up between out of contract and contracted. That just adds context to each decision. And yeah, let's just get into it. Let's go starting with Sam Draper. Okay, so I think, and by the way, this is an odd little, I like that all 5 of the Rucks are out of contract. It's kind of, you've got free reign here to really do what you want as a list manager. But Sam Draper, I think, there's not really free reign here. It's really up to him. I think in an ideal world, Sam Draper stays. I'm going to have him staying here because I think, he adds that athleticism and strength, which none of our Rucks really have. There's no other really Ruck on our list that is like Sam Draper. He's the only one who can rest forward and have an impact there. So he gives us multiple different ways in which we can line up as a system, which is good. But I also think, as much as I want Draper to stay, I think it's important that the Bombers don't bend over backwards to make sure he does. I think I'd like him to stay, but only if he wants to play for the Bombers. I want him to want to play for the Bombers, not be paid by the Bombers, if you get me. So yeah, if we want to build a winning culture, a good way to do that is by retaining the services of a player being offered more by other clubs. So yeah, ideal world, Draper stays. Even if he doesn't, we still get a good draft pick for him. It's not a disaster if he leaves. I wouldn't be as upset if when I was about Joe Danaher or one of those types of players. I just think he makes us a better team when he plays, so I'd rather him stay. And after him, I guess the next most important Ruck that we really have to lock up is Vigo Vicentini. I think he's got high-end attributes. He's young and raw. I think no matter what happens, right, you've got so many different scenarios that could unfold with so many out-of-contract players. Draper could stay, which means Brian leaves, or Brian stays, Draper leaves, Goldie stays, maybe. I think no matter what, there is no scenario that'll make me think offloading Vigo is a good idea. He's almost the most important one here, I think. This is just a player that we want to keep for the future and see develop. I don't think he's going to play much footy next year, and I don't think he should, unless he has a big pre-season, but I could see him being a pretty important player down the line. I really like what I see from Vigo. And then you've got Nick Bryan. He's still so young for a Ruck too. I don't quite know if he's got that high-end ability and potential, but I think he could develop into a very handy Ruck for the club. And it's important to retain the services of the players, at that 18 to 24 range, especially if Draper leaves. In this situation, I've got Draper staying, but either way, I think, we go forward with these 3 Rucks. These guys, I think, are, for the club, for me at least, set in stone as the ones we want to persist with. The issue is, will Brian want to stay if Draper stays? You know, does he want to be in a dual ruck system? Does Draper even stay? So yeah, there's a lot to go through there. I'm just going to have a little early drink break. The next couple are a bit tougher. You've got Lockie Blackiston. I think he's done enough to ensure he keeps his spot. I don't really think he's that main man going forward, but I feel like you need a Lockie Blackiston on your list. Just his size, his athletic profile, his age. What is he? 26, I think. That is perfect for a ruck. He's got plenty of time left on him. This is like a, it's an Andrew Phillips kind of thing, but also it's better because I think this guy has dual positional versatility. He's shown he can play down back, and we might need that next year. So yeah, this guy has to stay on. He's come in and adapted so well to a different position and pace of play. I think he stays for another year, and just he's a really handy depth option. I like Blackiston a lot. He's probably of the mid-season draftees, he's the one that surprised me the most. So yeah, well done, Lockie. And then you've got Old Gold, Todd Goldstein. So I think. Look, I think I said there's no world where Vigo. Actually, no, I take that back. If all our rucks leave, I'd be persisting with Goldie for another year. But I think in this scenario, I think Goldie's delisted or offloaded, and I hate to say that because I love Old Gold, but I just look. I think you let him retire in peace, settle down with old age. I love what he's done for us, but going forward, that ceiling is just going to decrease even more. That's always the issue with older players, and he is much older than anyone else. You see his output decrease. He's probably now one of the lesser rucks in the comp, but I guess he kind of makes up for it with that elite mentality. But yeah, his body's not going to hold up forever. It's barely holding up now. I think we can find other options if needed in the state leagues for just depth, because that is what Goldie is. He is a ruck coach and depth. And I think you can find that half of that somewhere else and just hire Goldie as a ruck coach and maybe he doesn't have to play footy his whole life. Maybe he wants to stop getting battered and beaten up by young, athletic, muscly rucks. So yeah, that's the changes I'd make for our ruck. Obviously, this is a pretty unpredictable zone, really, because of Sam Draper, and because all of them are out of contract. But in an ideal world, I think we're going forward with Draper, Brian, Vigo, and Blackiston. I think that makes sense, and Goldie's off to the side, unfortunately. Sorry, Goldie. All right, onto the midfield. It links pretty closely with the ruck, obviously. So, yeah, the good thing about this zone is that there is real top-end talent. Like, there are names there that I wouldn't consider dropping out because they're too good. Zach Merritt has to stay. I know there was trade talk about Zach Merritt. I've never understood that at all. I don't know why in a rebuild you would trade away your best player, but also just your leader. Like that's the player that we want staying at the club, someone who can lead the young kids and develop them. So I've never understood the Merritt trade talk. That I'm not even going to consider that. Nick Martin stays. The ACL is horrific because I think he's, him and Caddy are just about our most important players going forward. He's a star, Nick Martin. So we wait for him to come back. You've got Durham and Caldwell, just bulls. You need those tough nuts that just, will themselves to win the footy. I really like them going forward, and a good age too. And good age, Xavier Dersma, I'll throw him in the mix. The wing isn't a sexy position, and Dersma's probably not on the level of the guys above him, but he's a really rounded and still that great age under 25. Of the guys in green right now, Merritt is the only one over 25, so we do have some good younger midfielders going forward. The issue is, after the ones that I've already, selected to keep, we've got a whole bunch of guys who are just, I don't know. I guess they're tough to get a gauge on. The easiest place to start is with the out-of-contract guys. We'll see what we can do from there. So Dylan Shield, I just don't see a spot for him going forward. I think he is, I don't know. He's probably more valuable than we give him credit for. I think his standards on the track would be awesome for kids in their first year. He's experienced. He's fairly reliable when he does play, but he just isn't really a first-team option, and we don't want spots being taken up by veterans who just aren't really major parts of the side to begin with. If he was good enough to be playing regular footy, I'd back it in, but I don't think he is. Will Setterfield, I'm going to put him in limbo for a little bit. I wouldn't be signing him up straight away, let's just say that. I'll be waiting until after the end of the trade period because maybe his spot is linked closely with a contracted player that I try and offload. We'll get to that in a second. And Lamar Lawal, this is one I've been tossing up for days. I've been trying to make this video for a while now, and Lamar Lawal is one that I'm always flip-flopping with. It's really tough. Even now, Like, I haven't really made a proper decision. Like, he's a pretty unstable player going forward. That's the thing. Like, there's a bit of potential. I like, he's got really good energy, a good attitude. I like his defensive presence. I just don't really see if I see that potential with the footy, and that's a big part of the game. You got to be all right with the footy. So I'm going to give him another year. I think I'd rather the club make tougher calls on Dylan Shield and those types than babies like Lawal. And I think we can find ways to make further changes to give us spots outside of Lawal. So we're keeping him on. The next guy, okay, Darcy Parish. So this is who I've got linked with Will Setterfield. I think this is where we just have to make a big call. I do not see a way for the Bombers to get the most out of their midfield and their young midfielders if, we got guys like Darcy Parish and Will Setterfield fit and healthy. I like both those players. I think they're really good at their best, but they are fairly one-dimensional, and they're both too good to not play if available. That's the issue. So if we've got a young midfielder on our list playing good VFL footy, like, he's not going to get a go ahead of these guys if they're fit. I don't even necessarily think they're not good enough. I think they're good players, but I just think we need to be promoting a more dynamic and midfield, an adaptable midfield going forward. And these two guys, I just don't see that adaptability and dynamism in their game. So I think what the Dons could do, and this is what I'm going to try and do here, I'd be trying to find a new home for Darcy Parish in the trade period. His body scares me. He's a high earner. He's getting older. Age is getting past the profile we want to build. Less reliable physically than Setterfield. So I'd be trying to offload Darcy Parish and see what clubs could give up for him. It's maybe even a Jake Stringer type trade, like a later pick to get the job done. The thing is, though, for this to get done, teams would want to have him. That is the issue. And while he's earning quite a bit of money, I don't know if that happens. So I'd be content with the Bombers paying parts of his salary while we've still got space for the time being, but it doesn't just mean the deal gets done. So you can say trade Parish, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But for the sake of this video, we are going to say Parish is traded. And if that is the case, I'd be keeping Setterfield to give us that depth. And also, I think the thing that I like about Setterfield a bit more than Parish, even though I think Parish is the superior player, I like that Setterfield gives you that negating option. We don't really have another player that can do that as well as Setterfield does. So I think it's important to just give him another year if we are offloading Parish. If that trade can't get done for Darcy, I honestly think Setterfield is delisted, because I don't see how we really go forward with players that, I feel bad dissing them. They're good players, but they're just, we don't need that type of player, I don't think. Or in Parish's case, I think we don't. You move forward, Archie Perkins. This one is topical. Look, the way I see it, right, Archie Perkins is a struggling young player. He has no confidence. He is completely out of form. He is like nowhere right now. But is that a reason to just give up on him and trade him to another club? That's the question. It's not like Perkins is just a nobody in footy, because at his best he has shown he is a bloody good player. Like, you can't argue that. If you think Parish is a nobody, rewind to Hawthorn round 1 2024 or Hawthorn round 1 2023. He's played some monster games for the club, so there is clearly a player in there deep down somewhere. It is not going well getting the most out of him, but would Geelong just give up on a struggling player like Perkins and let him go elsewhere? That is the question. I think Geelong would be the type of club to bring in Perkins and try and get the most out of him and eventually get the most out of him. I think if you want to build a winning culture, you got to be trying to persist with these players. I think at least till the end of his contract. I get that there's a bit more value with Perkins on the trade table, but it's not like clubs would be giving up first rounders for him. Like, is it really worth moving on a player with his potential for a second or third round pick? I don't think so. I think while we're rebuilding, we have to be patient with some of our younger players, which is frustrating. I get that, but it would be pretty weak for the club to just give up on him because it's not working out. That's what I think. I think give him another year. We got to keep trying to get the most out of those 18 to 24-year-olds on our list. This is a rebuild, all right? We're not trying to get better straight away. This isn't going to be... We're not going to be winning the flag in 2026. We got to be persisting with these players who have shown potential. We want that talent, Perkins has that talent. It's just trying to get it out of him on a consistent week-to-week basis. I'm not sure if we can, by the way. I'm really not, but I think we'd be silly not to try. Sardell Hawley, no reason to get rid of him. Contracted till next year. May as well give him more time to see what he can do. Elijah Sardis. So this might sound contradictory after what I said about Perkins and those 18 to 24-year-olds. I've got no doubts that Sardis is going to be a good footballer. That's what I say that. All right. But the question is, what does he bring to the Essendon midfield? What would be the benefit of sticking with Sardis for the future? You could say he would be a good player. I agree, he would be a good player. But in our midfield, which is pretty much contest and nothing else, what would be the benefit of having a good player similar to those others? I personally think we've got enough of those, clearance winners with no outside polish. I think the way forward, like I said with Setterfield and Parrish, is to explore more dynamic rotations. And the issue with Sardis is he's not a versatile player. He can only really play one style, one position. That is fine for some clubs. There are going to be teams that need that and want that. But Essendon aren't one of those clubs. I think this isn't an issue with Sardis. It's an issue with drafting that style of player to begin with. So I think the Bombers should trade him to a different team. Nothing to do with quality. I think he's going to be a good midfielder when all is said and done. I just don't know how he fits into our side. Can we really justify playing him ahead of Caldwell, Durham, Martin, alongside them even? It just doesn't work, I don't think. I know that he's not finished product. I think even when he's close to finished product, I don't see how it really works. I think we trade Sardis, try and get a pick out of him, and attack the draft for some more dynamic options, because there are a few around in the draft. But yeah, unfortunately, this Sardis experiment, I just don't think it's working. Unfortunately, nothing to do with Sardis. It's more the type of player he is, not the actual player he is. But yeah, I guess that's the midfield. There's a few changes. Shield delisted. We move on Parrish and Sardis to other clubs. That kind of takes away some of the positional versatility a bit. And then in the draft or trade period, we add a couple of options with more layers to their game. I think you could also make the arguments for a Setterfield or a Lowell or a Perkins to be on the trade table or offloaded. I completely agree that those players they're in the mix, 100%. I'm personally going to stick with them for another year. Right, now we move on to the key defenders, and this is I bloody hate this zone. Does anyone... Hold on. Drink break. Does anyone look at this zone and just cry? I've been looking at these, on screen, what you've got for a while now, just thinking about what I want to do, and whenever I go to this one, it just frustrates me. So, Jaden Laverty is out of contract. He's also the only fit player on screen right now. Yep. Keep in mind, Lockie Blackiston is also a part-time defender now, so that does help. But I mean, it's annoying because you look at what we've got there, and it's like four players who are over 2 meters tall: Reed, Mackay, Hayes, Cox. I don't know why we've drafted like that. I really don't. I think we've got no real flexibility when certain players go down, and we've seen that. Keep in mind Blackiston as well. So there are 5 players really that can play defence that are over 2 meters tall, or close to 2 meters tall, I think, in Hayes' case. So yeah, this is a tough zone to know what we're going to do with, and I think it might sound annoying and tricky, but I think this is a zone that you can't really touch too much until you add to it. I think that is exactly what I see with this zone, and I haven't really changed my view on that at all. This is a zone that if you're not adding to it and getting the right components and additions to it before you take away from it, you could really hurt it if you were to take first. So what we're going to do is we're going to delist Jaden Laverty. I think he's durable, he's tough, he's there for us. I just don't think it's more a quality thing. I don't think he's that effective a player anymore, and there isn't really a ceiling for him to become that effective player again. I think it's worth delisting him and looking at some state league players even for that plug and play option, or even just hit the draft and find someone that would, if we go down to our last string defender, we can at least be a young player. So Laverty delisted. The big question is what happens from here. So we're going to start by ruling out some guys for trades. So Zach Reed, we got to keep. We're not getting rid of Zach Reed. I know his body's letting him down, but we'd be silly to give up on such a talented player like he is. And Lewis Hayes as well. I think he's got tremendous upside for the future. I think these two could provide a nice little combination in a few years. There's a serious player I think that we need to persist with and keep him on our list. So yeah. I think we need numbers too. So although those guys are good for the future, I think we shouldn't be trading Ben Mackay. He's soon going to be of real value, Ben Mackay, because that front-ended contract, it looked bad early, 1.4 mil, but in a few years he's going to be on about 500k. which will give us, while we've added youth to the team, it'll give us a chance to bring in some real big fish. So, yeah, we keep Ben Mackay, and now it is tough. So, look, and this is where it is really about the make and the shape of a team more than the player themselves. Because there's a lot of talk going around about Jordan Ridley and whether or not he is tradable when everyone thinks he is, and I get that. Like, if you look at Jordan Ridley as a player, he should be tradable. He's injury prone, not getting out on the park, very talented, so there's probably a little bit of value still there. Can you really justify trading Jordan Ridley? That's the question. I think, right, if you trade Jordan Ridley, you have to keep Laverty. And is that the way we want to move forward as a club? Would we rather persist with Jaden Laverty, who is durable with not as much talent, than Jordan Ridley, who is one of our best players but can't get it out on the park? I think there's an element of trusting the player, Jordan Ridley, trusting the high performance to get him right, and also just trusting that I guess he can stay fit, because he's the only player in our key defenders, him and Laverty, that are under 2 meters tall, and we can't go in next year with a key defensive setup that is full of ruckman types. That's just not going to work. We're going to be too tall. I think it is all well and good to just say trade Ridley. It's not working out, but really, if you trade Ridley, you're creating a massive hole in our team that we can't just fix straight away. Like, I get, people will say just go to the draft, bring in a young kid, but we don't know if that kid will develop into a good player. It might be a flop, and then we're just stuck with a backline that doesn't work, that has no shape to it. So I think we have to keep Ridley. I know that might annoy a few people, but I just don't see... He's probably one that I just wouldn't even really consider trading, looking at the shape of our backline. I think there are a few players here that could definitely be on the trade table if we had a more rounded key defensive zone, but we don't. All right. Unfortunately, bad trading in the past means we don't have that. We've drafted one guy since 2021 or 2020 even. Lewis Hayes is the only player that we've drafted here since Nick Cox, and Nick Cox isn't really that, like, he's more of a utility than a key defender. So yeah, we've neglected this zone for too long. I think we need to add to it before we take away from it. And this might be the hottest take of the video, but Nick Cox I'm going to keep. I think just for that reason, we need the depth here. We need the numbers before we take away from it. I'm going to be keeping Nick Cox. I'm going to be giving him the opportunity to perform with the pressure of a delisting. I think that is important. That could really unlock a player potentially. Not saying it will, but there's that possibility. Yeah, I think while our key defensive zone is so fragile and weak and thin, we can't be taking too much away from it. So we're going to be keeping it pretty much the same as it is. We're going to be adding to it. I'm hoping we bring in not one but two key defenders for this zone, and then 2026, that is the big year. That is the year where we are making real change in this zone. There's going to be a zone kind of like that this year. I'll talk about it in a bit, where there's just change. There's half of the zone is gone, and I think that could be next year for the key defenders. There's not a lot we can really do now while we don't have the numbers at our disposal and the injury issues. I think we add to it, and then 2026 is when we cut, okay? So I hope that makes sense, because I know that might be a controversial take, because everybody is on the Ridley trade train. I'm not there as much yet. I think he's too important to our defense to get rid of. All right, now you go to the key forwards, which is kind of the opposite. Like, you've got the key defenders, which is, you want to be keeping most of them for now, but this zone is bloated. There are quite a few names here, not many of them that good. That's the issue. Like, we've got 8, or how many key forwards do we have that we just don't need? But yeah, look, what we got to do is we got to minimize what we've got here and reduce the numbers. And the tough thing about that is that there are going to be some unlucky players, because everybody on screen has shown good things. That's the tough thing about these decisions, is that, a Liam McMahon or a Tom Edwards or something like that, they've played good footy, good AFL footy, but it doesn't mean they just, get a list spot. So we're going to start with the guys. Well, actually, what we'll do is we'll put Liam McMahon in limbo, okay? He is someone that we're not going to sign up straight away, even if he's playing good footy. He's our only out-of-contract forward, which means he gives us a fallback in case we can't move anyone on. So he is unfortunately in the firing line. He's in limbo. Then we move on to the guys that are worth keeping, and I think Nate Caddy, obviously, he's our future. There's no doubt about that. If a club came with, okay, this is a discussion. What would it take for us to trade Nate Caddy? Would it be like 3 or 4 first round picks? Probably. I would probably not even feel good about that. Archer May, I'd be keeping pretty easily too. I like that combination, that strength and agility between the two of them. I think that could be a nice combo for the future. And it makes Dermot Brereton unhappy, which is great. And then the third one I'd be really quick to re-sign is Peter Wright. Well, not re-sign, he's already signed, but keep. I think he's a really important player. He's our leading goal scorer, having played less games. He's helped Goldie out in the ruck. He's our only forward that we have that can properly pinch hit in the ruck. I think for balance and leadership and experience, you keep him in, but then you go down. There's a lot less to work with. This is where it gets tough, and it's not a good position. So you've got Harry Jones. I still think he's got something. I'd be keeping him too. I like the dual positional versatility. He was the role player of the year, by the way, last year. We've all forgotten about that. I think another preseason is needed to really judge him as he enters near that physical prime range. Tom Edwards, look, he's signed on. What can you do about that? I think you just keep him in. I think the re-signing of Tom Edwards early was questionable, maybe. Because now you've got Liam McMahon on the outside waiting for his chance. There's not really much we can do about Edwards. It's annoying, but yeah, it leaves us with not many options. Cale Jarine is contracted. He stays on. He's a project player. The only real ones left that I think you can potentially offload are Langford and McMahon. I don't think there's anyone really left in that forward line that you can warrant letting go or clubs will come for. So I think what the Bombers try and do here to reduce numbers is try and trade Kyle Langford. I think that is a trade that could get done. Obviously, ideal world stuff here, but I think clubs would want him. He's someone who could be really helpful in a premiership push. I think we need to cut down this zone, and this is a guy, right? As good as he is, he's a very good player, one of our best. All right, but as good as he is, maybe he's not as needed as we thought he might be a year or two ago. He is he's gone to a stage where I see more room for growth with Caddy and May, which is understandable. But only if there's less congestion around them. And Langford is either going to be injured or providing those kids with less game time. That is the way I see it. Yes, we'd be getting probably a goal or two more a game, but I don't know if that's what we want. Same with Stringer last year. It has gotten to that stage where I'm looking at this and I'm seeing Jake Stringer last year, which is tough because those are our two highest goal scorers in the last few years, But yeah, I'd be offloading them and I'd be persisting with Wright, Caddy, and May. And then Liam McMahon, I'd be delisting him. I just look at how many players we have. And think about it. In this situation, I've got Sam Draper staying as well, which adds even more clutter to the forward line. I see this guy as pretty much like a Tom Edwards. And Tom Edwards is going to be just as handy a player, I think. I think if we're fully fit, McMahon is sixth in the pecking order? Is it really worth keeping a player that if we need list spots? I don't think so. I think, and he was the last player Essendon has actually selected on this list. He was taken with our fourth pick in the mid-season draft. So I'd be delisting him. It feels wrong. It feels mean because he's played good footy. We just need list spots, and I don't know if McMahon is that guy for us that we really need going forward. At least not over some of the other guys here. So it feels wrong, but I'd be moving on Langford and McMahon, and that way you can put more time into Caddy and May and Wright to support them, and you've got Jones who can play anywhere, Edwards is depth, I've got Draper staying in the forward line as well. That is enough. The Jarine for the future, those numbers there are enough for a forward line. I think if you keep McMahon, it is really cluttered, and it might seem okay now because we've got injuries, but you can't just assume that we're going to have injuries for a whole year next year too. So yeah, I'd be cutting Langford and McMahon, unfortunately, but I don't feel good about it. Not at all. All right. This is a zone I like, the defenders. This is a really healthy area of the ground. There isn't really much I'm worried about at all here. We've done fantastically well to develop this area of the field. Archie Roberts is a future leader, a current leader, I hear. Angus Clark stays on. He's fantastic. Zach Johnson, that ball use. Those three are great. I love those guys for the future. I think they could all play different positions going forward too, which is good. You throw in Jaden Ewan as well. I really like Jaden Ewan. He's contracted till next year. He's a Category B rookie, lockdown defender. No reason to offload him at all. These four, I'm really happy persisting with them. And also, throw in Jackson Pryor. I think if I said that a month ago, you guys would have unsubscribed. But It feels like everyone is starting to hop on the Pryor train a bit more to end the year, which is fun. I like the difference between those those 5 players, which is good. You've got 4 that are under 20. Pryor's 20 to 24, 23 to 24. He's also durable, young but experienced and tough. Puts his body on the line for us. He's handy depth. That is what he is. The others are those players for the future. Now, this is where it gets tough, because you've got 5 players who I think we all just say yes for, okay? But now it is Andy McGrath and Mason Redman. And if you don't know, guys, these two are probably the most, I won't say hated, but, most talked about players on the Essendon list. They're 2 of the players most commonly told to trade away by fans. I'm sorry, I'm keeping Andy McGrath. And I'm gonna go on a rant here. I do not understand the thoughts behind trading him away. I know that there's calls for it, for that sort of stuff. But you got to think about why you want players to be traded. Okay. So I think a lot of it with McGrath is frustration and passion from fans angry that he was taken pick 1. And I agree, he should not have been taken pick 1. That was a mistake. But is that a reason to delist a player? Is that what we're getting to? Just moving on players because they're not as good as their draft pick suggests? I don't get it at all. I see McGrath, I remember at the end of 2021, right? That elimination final where Cody Waitman had just destroyed us. And the narrative around the Bombers and how we could get better is to bring in a lockdown defender to really lock down on those forwards that were causing chaos. Because that was a big part of, a big flaw in our team. Funnily enough, when McGrath moves to defence, and this might be a coincidence, but that's not an issue anymore. All right? We're not talking about small forwards anymore because we've got an elite lockdown defender on our list who is taking care of that, and he gets no recognition. I don't get it. When was the last time we talked about Essendon being unable to lock down on small defenders? If you can tell me down in the comments, go for it. But I'll tell you now, it was when McGrath was in the midfield. That is the last time. I know his ball use is not good. That is an issue. But he does more good to the team than bad. And I get why people don't see the good he does because it's off the ball, and they see the bad because it's with the ball. But it's wild. I don't know. If you're trading McGrath, you're sending the club backwards in terms of actual defence. It would mean that we'd have to find a new option to play lockdown. Roberts isn't that player. It would probably be him, and I like him with more freedom, so it would probably make him a worse player. Some will say Nguyen. He hasn't played a game of footy yet. Maybe if Nguyen comes out and looks amazing in 2026, maybe then you could justify trading McGrath. But no, that talk is just silly. Every time I see someone say McGrath should be traded, I die a little inside. It is just I'm not gonna mince my words. That is just silly, I think. As for Redman, I think there's a bit more here. So I kind of see it and this comes down to development and whether or not players can develop with Redman. So I don't see a proper future for Redman. I also don't really see too much value. There might be a second or third rounder in it. I think if a club came asking the question, I would listen to offers and see what they say. But the way I see it, you've got Redman playing footy now alongside Roberts, Johnson and Clark. And if that wasn't the case, if he was taking games away from those guys, I'd probably be on it'd be like Langford, where you'd rather them somewhere else so you can get another list spot, but also have players behind them playing. But the fact that he's playing alongside those guys and leading them on the track, his that footage of him mic'd up leading Angus Clark through the 2K time trial shows that he's got leadership. I think you keep him for another year. It's not like he's taking games away from anyone. He's playing alongside them, which probably helps them and takes pressure off them. Honestly, I'm just keeping this zone exactly the same. This is a genuinely really strong zone. This is I'd say this is our strongest zone. It is looking fantastic for the future. You've got guys there, leaders there who are playing footy now. McGrath's durable, Redman's not. But yeah, I like this zone. It's good. And now we get into a zone that I bloody hate. This zone. There's two, right? While I've been doing this, it's this and the key defenders that just annoy me every time I look at this screen. Yeah, I just think this needs to be completely just punched in the face, this zone. It needs to be completely restructured. It's too much work to get done in 1 year, potentially. So keep that in mind. I'm planning for this to be worked around next year too. Yeah, look, we've got NGA players on the way, so Hassan Swade. There are 9 on screen, 11 with those guys. Yeah, let's start with the out-of-contract guys. There are some easy calls here. I think Jai Menzies delisted. He just hasn't been able to break into that team at all since he was dropped. Alwyn Davey Jr. hasn't played a game this year. I feel bad, but I'd be delisting Oscar Smart, purely because he's out of contract. I think I don't think he's any more or less promising than Day Wicks or Unwin, but with the amount of talent coming in, I'm just is Smart going to be playing footy next year? That is the question. I don't think so. So if we keep Smart, it means we've got some really big decisions to make elsewhere with contracted players, and I don't think it's the time to be doing that. So yeah. And also, right, this is a really young forward line. So look on screen. Gresham and Guelphy are over 25. The rest are under 20, I think, or Menzies 21, Davies 21. They're gone anyway. Hobbs. Speaking of Hobbs, I'm going to be putting him in limbo for a bit. I'm going to chat about the others first, because this is where it gets interesting. You've got the contracted guys. You've got Kako. He stays. Makes sense. I think he's the one you can really build around, the most talented of the lot. And then you've got the guys who haven't really quite put it all together but are young and contracted, like Day Wicks. He stays. Reece Unwin sees out his contract too. They're definitely in that project player range where you want to see another preseason from them, because I think the issues with Unwin is that he's so unfit, and Day Wicks is just, it might be a fitness thing. I don't know. He's fading out of games quite a bit in the VFL. But I think you persist with those guys. Then you get to Gresham and Guelphy. And now, that's what we're at. What do we do with these guys? So I'm going to start by trying to trade. I'm going to put these guys in limbo. I think all three of these guys I'm putting on the trade table, okay? I'm not going to trade all three of them, but I'm putting all three on the trade table. I think what I would do first is... am I going to go off my notes here? Okay, what I would do is I would try and trade Ben Hobbs. I think there is the most value there. I think you've got players coming in of his role next year and players already of his role. I think it's just better than simply delisting him, and there'll be clubs wanting him. I think, and he probably wants to go as well, to be honest. You can trade out of contract players. So yeah, I'm going to trade Ben Hobbs. That is the first thing I'm going to do. What that does now is it leaves us with Gresham and Guelphy. And the reason why I wanted to offload Hobbs before them is because not only does it give us numbers in a zone that just needs to be completely destroyed and rebuilt again, but because you do need some experience in this zone. It is incredibly young. Look at the numbers in green. They're all 19 or 20. We need experience. We need one of Gresham and Guelphy to stay. But also, the more this season's gone on, the more I've jumped on board with the Liam Ryan rumours. I think if Liam Ryan comes into the club, we can afford to throw these guys on the trade table. If he doesn't, which is what we're going to assume for this video, maybe, unfortunately, we just keep these guys on till next year when they're out of contract. I think in an ideal world, and this is what I talked about earlier at the start of the video, how a lot of this stuff is going to happen over 2 years. It can't all happen straight away. I think ideal world, you offload the players that just don't have that talent, I think. And that's what I've done with a few of these guys. You offload those guys, you create list spots, and then you keep the guys that might be a bit iffy, 50-50, and while they're out of contract 2026, you give them that extra year, not even just for them, but for the club to have that ability to make the decisions next year as well. Like if we're going into next year with Gresham and Guelphy out of contract, it gives us two opportunities to delist and move on two players. I think that's important because, as we've seen this year, there's a lot of players that we just can't delist that are out of contract, so we're having to dip into the contracted blokes. So I think it's important to plan for the future in that regard, having players that could potentially be moved on next year. But I also think these guys are just... that experience is what we need. We cannot cut too deep. We can't have a forward line made of 19-year-olds. That would just be silly, especially because the key forwards, Peter Wright's the only older one that I kept at 25. So we need to keep at least one of these guys. And if we're not bringing in a Liam Ryan, then probably both. I'd want to be moving them on. I don't think these guys are parts of the future. And it's important to have some, some parts of the future in your team. But I think you need leadership, you need experience. These guys aren't really leaders, but they're experienced, and they'll take attention away from the kids. I don't like it, but I'm going to be keeping them for next year. And then in 2026, we probably move them on then. I don't like it. I know you guys probably don't like it. I don't like it either. I just think for the build and for keeping stability in the forward line, you do need a bit of that. You need a bit of that what even is it? What do they provide? What do we need a bit of? Felix? I don't know. I'm keeping them in. I think it's more about Huss and Swade next year anyway. And in an ideal world, right, these guys, and we've seen this as well, they could be dropped to the VFL. Like that's just the reality. These guys might be playing VFL footy next year, and at least they'll give us depth if needed. And we know that they can play good footy. It's just they don't do it very often. So yeah, I'd be offloading them in 2020, or trying to offload them in 2026 if things don't change. But I think our forward, it's just a crap zone, isn't it? Look at it. Does that make you angry? It makes me angry. But yeah, there is at least potential. Like, you know, I really like Isaac Kako going forward. I like Hussein. I like Swade. I think there's potential there at least. So yeah, that is the good thing. Now, on screen, if I remember while editing, is the list of the outgoing players that we have from this video. Keep in mind, all it takes is Sam Draper to change his mind and choose Brisbane, and we've got a whole domino effect here. But in this scenario, I've traded Kyle Langford and Darcy Parish away, both probably for cheap, but both have issues with their body. There's enough depth in their position to cover them. I'd be trading Elijah Sardis away as well. I think there's more value there with him. You've got Dylan Shield, Goldstein, and Laverty, 3 veterans being delisted. I'd have Ben Hobbs out too, either traded or just let go. But I think clubs wouldn't mind giving us a pick for him. And then you've got the unlucky guys, Liam McMahon and Oscar Smart. I just can't fit them in. And then rounding it out with Davey and Menzies. So that is 11 players out the door. That is a good amount, you know. More in 2026 as well. You know, you could even argue guys like Lamont Lual, Nick Cox, Jade Gresham, Matt Guelphy could also be out. But they're all out of contract next year. And I think that gives us a good position going into next year with players who are fighting for their careers, but also we've got list decisions that we can make a lot easier, because this is a tough year for it. There's a lot of out of contract players that, you know, could arguably stay, but they won't because it's just too hard to move on some contracted guys. But yeah, what I've tried to do is I've tried to reduce the amount of injury prone players, which I think I've done with Parish and Langford. I've tried to move on older players as well. Goldstein, Laverty, Shield, Langford, Parish too. So I think we've cut a decent amount of this list going forward. And honestly, that might be more than the Bombers actually do. Like, it's going to be hard to get all those trades done for Langford, Parish, Sardis, and where is he, Hobbs. But yeah, if we were to go into the draft with 36 listed players with a few rookie spots as well, which we've got, I'd be happy. And I think, you know, although some of these guys are really unlucky, it creates opportunities for the guys coming in. And there could be even more guys. Like this list, by the way, the 11 I've got could be completely different to yours. Like that's the fun thing about this, is that it is a really hard year to really understand what's going to happen or what should happen. But yeah, that is all. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Long video today. Thank you for sticking with me. I will be back with more draft and trade content coming up. Lots of draft and trade content coming up, I think, because we don't want to talk about the footy anymore. But yeah, cheers for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know down below what you would have done differently. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.